There are photographs that preserve memories, and then there are photographs that should not exist at all. In the summer heat of 1989, a single Polaroid appeared in a convenience store parking lot in Florida. It showed a young woman bound with tape, fear carved into her eyes, lying in the back of a van. Beside her, a boy, gagged and helpless. The image was crude, raw, but too precise to dismiss as a prank. For those who saw it, the question wasn't only who these two were, but why the picture had been taken in the first place. Some believed the girl was Tara Calico, a 19-year-old who had vanished without a trace during her morning bike ride in New Mexico just a year before. Others whispered it was proof of something far darker, an artifact of power, control, and silence. Tara was no ghost when she left her home that day. She was real, flesh and blood, pedaling along a sunlit road she knew by heart. Yet in the space of an hour, she slipped out of the ordinary world and into a void that has never been filled. Law enforcement searched, neighbors speculated, but the trail ended as abruptly as it began. And then, out of nowhere, that Polaroid. A frozen scream. A message, perhaps, from those who thrive on fear. This is not just the story of one missing girl. It is about how the world is built to make people disappear, how evidence can surface only to be buried again, how truth itself is managed like a commodity, controlled by forces you were never meant to see. Tonight, we descend into the abyss of Tara Calico's disappearance, the Polaroid that should not exist, and the hidden machinery that feeds on silence. Tara Calico's life was not extraordinary, and that's what makes her disappearance so disturbing. She was 19, ambitious, sharp-witted, the kind of girl who filled a room with energy without even trying. Every morning she rode her pink bike along the same route, a straight stretch of highway near her small town in New Mexico. Her mother sometimes followed in the car, worried about traffic, worried about strangers, worried in ways mothers often are. But on that September morning in 1988, Tara asked her not to. She smiled, pedaled away, and promised she would be home by noon. She never returned. The hours stretched, the sun shifted, and her absence grew heavier. When the bike was found abandoned, the tires punctured, it told a story of sudden violence. But no witness stepped forward. No clear evidence surfaced. It was as if the earth itself had swallowed her whole. For the people of her town, disbelief turned into dread. For her family, dread hardened into a wound that never closed. Yet what is more unsettling is how quickly the machinery of authority faltered. Investigations were sluggish, reports conflicted, leads evaporated. What should have been urgent became muted. It was as though someone, somewhere, decided that Tara's life, her pain, her fate, did not matter enough to pursue. And that silence, that erasure, is the first clue. Because disappearances don't only happen to people, they happen to truth itself. The Polaroid, when it surfaced, was a fracture in that silence, a crack in the mask. It forced the question, if Tara's fate could be hidden, what else is concealed behind closed doors? And more importantly, who benefits from keeping us in the dark? The investigation into Tara Calico's disappearance should have been a storm of urgency. A young woman vanished in broad daylight. Tire tracks, a broken Walkman cassette. Her bicycle cast aside like an afterthought. But what followed was not urgency. It was hesitation. Theories multiplied, but answers withered. Some said she was taken by strangers on the highway. Others whispered it was someone local, someone who knew her route and her habits. The truth was stretched thin, diluted, as if the story itself was being managed rather than solved. And then, almost 1 year later, a stranger stumbled upon a Polaroid in the parking lot of a convenience store in Florida, 2,000 miles from where Tara had disappeared. The image was not blurry. It was not distant. It was deliberate. A girl with bound wrists and tape across her mouth, wide eyes staring directly into the camera. Beside her, a boy, gagged in the same way, frozen in terror. The photograph had been left out in the open, waiting to be found, like a calling card from someone who wanted the world to know, but not to act. When Tara's mother saw the photo, she felt her body collapse under the weight of recognition. She swore it was her daughter. The hair, the shape of the jaw, even a scar. For her, the image was undeniable, but authorities hesitated again. Experts argued. Some claimed it was Tara, others dismissed it, and in the space of that argument, the fire of urgency was smothered once more. But ask yourself, why would such a photo surface at all? Why would someone expose their crime so brazenly unless the point was not to hide but to taunt? Unless the point was to show that they could act in plain sight and still remain untouchable? The Polaroid was not only evidence, it was a performance of power. When the Polaroid reached the hands of law enforcement, it should have ignited a firestorm. A missing girl possibly photographed alive. A boy whose identity could connect another unsolved case. The chance to save lives, or at least to pierce the darkness with a single point of light. But that's not what happened. The reaction was slower, colder, quieter. Experts were called in to analyze the photo. Some confirmed it was Tara. Others rejected it. The FBI reviewed, then hesitated, then retreated into silence. On the surface, this looks like indecision. But look closer. The confusion was not an accident. It was the design. When truth threatens power, the simplest tactic is not outright denial, but drowning it in debate. What is real? What is fake? Who can be trusted? Who cannot? By the time the public is exhausted, the urgency is gone. The case stalls, the trail goes cold, and the world moves on. The media played its part as well. Headlines appeared, then faded. Some networks leaned into the horror. Others framed it as a hoax. The public was never given clarity, only fragments. Imagine how many families, staring into their televisions, wondered if their own lost children might be next. Fear is contagious, and once planted, it spreads quietly, invisibly, shaping the way people think, the way they trust, the way they obey. Tara Calico's mother refused to let the silence win. She appeared on broadcasts. She argued with officials. She carried the weight of proof in her voice. But the longer the case lingered, the heavier the machinery of doubt pressed down. You must understand, silence is not absence. Silence is pressure. It is the slow suffocation of truth until only a whisper remains, easy to dismiss, easy to forget. And so the Polaroid became less a piece of evidence and more a question mark suspended in air. Who left it? Why was it found? And most important of all, who decided it would be safer for the world not to know? Fear is not only an emotion, it is a currency. It buys compliance, obedience, silence. When someone vanishes in plain sight, when a Polaroid surfaces with bound captives staring back at us, it is not only a crime against the individual, it is a message to everyone who sees it. The message is simple. You are powerless. Think of the photograph again. A girl, a boy, gagged and tied. The camera was not hidden. The shot was framed. It was meant to be seen. It was meant to travel. Why? Because symbols infect faster than facts. A symbol bypasses logic and lodges in the subconscious. You do not debate it. You feel it. You carry it. And in carrying it, you are changed. This is the machinery of the fear economy. Terrify the public, confuse the investigators, and then normalize the silence. The cycle is complete. The masses learn to look away. They learn to doubt their own instincts. They learn to accept that some truths will never be uncovered. That acceptance is the real crime, because once a man accepts that some knowledge is forbidden, he no longer resists. He obeys. Consider how many times you've seen a case like Tara's, a flash of news, a shocking image, and then nothing, buried in archives, replaced by the next distraction. Each cycle trains the mind to expect nothing. Each silence builds a cage around our perception, and when perception is caged, control is complete. The Polaroid was never just evidence. It was a signal, a fragment of the larger system that thrives on uncertainty, on the erosion of trust. A system where truth becomes fog, and in that fog, the hidden hand can move freely. So the question is not only what happened to Tara Calico. The question is, what is happening to us every time we are shown terror without resolution? If you followed me this far, you already sense that what we're speaking of is not simply one disappearance, not one Polaroid, but a pattern, a design. You felt the weight of silence, the way truth is smothered, the way fear is planted like a seed and left to grow inside of you. And here is where the descent changes, because once you see the pattern, you cannot unsee it. I want you to understand something. Symbols are powerful. They separate the sleeping from the awake. They mark those who choose to look deeper from those who choose to look away. That Polaroid was not only a picture, it was a symbol of control. But now, you have the chance to create a symbol of your own. If you are still here, if you are still listening, I want you to write these words in the comments and write them twice so there is no mistaking your choice. Write, I see the hidden hand. Again, I see the hidden hand. This is not a game. It is not a trick for numbers or vanity. It is a ritual. It is a declaration. Every man who writes those words marks himself as someone who refuses to look away, someone who acknowledges the shadow that moves behind the curtain. The algorithm will register it, yes, but more importantly, so will you. Because the moment you declare that you see the hidden hand, you are no longer a passive witness. You are part of the descent. And once you descend, there is no climbing back to ignorance. The choice is yours. Look away and remain comfortable. Or write the phrase and mark yourself as one who has seen the forbidden and chosen to continue. The girl in the Polaroid is what most remember, but look closer. Beside her a boy, younger, gagged in the same fashion, bound in the same position. His identity was never confirmed, but his existence in that image carries its own shadow. Some believed the boy was Michael Henley, a 9-year-old who vanished in New Mexico the very same year Tara disappeared. Michael had gone camping in the Zuni Mountains with his father. One moment he was there, playing in the wilderness. The next, he was gone. Vanished, like Tara, without trace or explanation. The connection seemed undeniable. 2 disappearances, 1 state, 1 year, and then a photograph appearing far away in Florida that seemed to capture them both. Michael's family believed it. They felt the features matched, the eyes, the hair. They saw their son in that Polaroid, just as Tara's mother saw her daughter. For them, the photo was not a mystery. It was recognition. But once again, the system pushed back. Skeptics dismissed the possibility. Officials delayed. And the argument repeated. Maybe real, maybe not. Maybe yes, maybe no. Years later, Michael's remains were discovered in the mountains where he disappeared. The official ruling, exposure, a tragic accident. But ask yourself, does that close the door, or does it open another? Why did the Polaroid exist at all if it wasn't him? Why did families across the nation recognize their lost children in a single brutal image? Could it be that the photo was not tied to one crime, but to something larger? A symbol crafted to resonate with anyone who had lost, anyone who feared, anyone who doubted the safety of their own world. The boy in the Polaroid is not only a child, He is every missing person blurred into one frame, every story collapsed into one symbol. He is the embodiment of how the machinery of disappearance does not stop at one life, but ripples outward to consume families, communities, entire societies. That is why the image endures, not because of certainty, but because of the wound of doubt. Evidence is supposed to reveal truth. A photograph, a file, a confession, a trace of blood, a witness account. These are meant to bring light into the dark. But what happens when evidence itself becomes the tool of control? What happens when every scrap of proof can be twisted, buried, reframed, or simply dismissed? Look at the Polaroid again. For Tara's mother, it was proof. For Michael's family, it was proof. For investigators, it was a question mark. For skeptics, it was nothing at all. The same image, 4 interpretations. Which one is true? The answer is, none of them matter. Because the system does not need to prove or disprove. It only needs to keep you uncertain, and uncertainty is more effective than denial. We live in an age where photographs can be dismissed as hoaxes, where files can vanish into archives no one is allowed to see, where testimony can be labeled unreliable until it collapses under its own weight. Truth is not destroyed. It is diluted. It is stretched so thin that no one knows what to believe. That is how evidence becomes a weapon, not to solve, but to destabilize. This is why the Polaroid continues to haunt, because it represents the moment when proof failed. A single image that could have broken a case instead became another labyrinth. And in that labyrinth, people lose themselves. Families are torn apart. Communities fracture. Generations learn that the truth is always out of reach. But here is the darker truth. When evidence fails, power wins. When people argue over whether the photo is real, no one asks why it exists in the first place. When they fight over whether it's Tara or Michael or neither, no one asks who staged it, who placed it, and why. The distraction is the point. The endless circle of maybe and maybe not is the cage. And while you argue inside that cage, the hidden hand moves freely outside it. The Polaroid is more than a photograph. It is an archetype, a symbol that echoes across time. In one frozen frame, we see not only Tara, not only Michael, but every victim whose story was erased, every truth that was strangled before it could breathe. That is why this image will not die. It is a mirror of how the powerful operate, not just with violence, but with spectacle. History is littered with these archetypes. Ancient empires displayed the bodies of dissidents as warnings. Secret orders left cryptic symbols carved into stone to remind the masses who truly ruled. Inquisitions burned books not only to destroy knowledge, but to demonstrate that knowledge itself could be forbidden. And in the modern age, the same principle lives on. Terror is documented, displayed, and then shrouded in mystery. The cycle never changes. Only the tools do. A Polaroid left in a parking lot. A classified file locked in a cabinet. A grainy video released without context. Each is designed to provoke, to infect the collective psyche. Each asks questions but never answers them. Because the answer is irrelevant. What matters is the effect, the fear, the conditioning, the reminder that someone is watching, someone is acting, and you are powerless to stop it. When you look at that Polaroid, you are not simply looking at a crime scene. You are looking at a ritual of control that has existed since the dawn of power. And the reason it resonates so deeply is because somewhere in your bones, you already recognize the pattern. You have seen it in headlines that vanish, in scandals that are buried, in truths that are silenced. You know it when your gut screams that something is wrong, but the official story tells you to move along. The Polaroid, then, is not just about Tara Calico. It is about the structure of control itself, a snapshot of how the forbidden is dangled before us, how truth is displayed but never delivered. And the most haunting realization is this: maybe the Polaroid was never meant to be solved. Maybe it was only meant to be seen. To understand the Polaroid is to understand the machinery behind the curtain. Crimes like Tara Calico's disappearance do not unfold in isolation. They unfold inside a system, a web of power, bureaucracy, and silence that feeds on erasure. At the surface, you see a missing person, a grieving family, a stalled investigation. But beneath, you see the gears turning, reports lost, leads dismissed, files sealed, journalists warned. The process is not chaos, it is control. Think about how many disappearances never reach a headline. How many families file reports that vanish into drawers? How many lives are erased with no Polaroid to prove they ever screamed? What makes Tara's case unique is not only the horror, but the visibility. The Polaroid broke into the open. But imagine the cases where no photograph leaks, where silence reigns completely. What happens then? Who remembers them? Who speaks their names? This is the true machinery. It does not only silence individuals, it silences entire realities. It decides which truths are permissible and which must be smothered. It weaponizes doubt, delays, bureaucracy, and fatigue until the world accepts disappearance as ordinary, until fear is normalized, until people no longer question why the powerful are never held accountable. And here is the darkest layer. Some of this machinery is not accidental. It is designed. It is profitable. Missing persons feed industries, media, politics, even black markets that thrive on instability. The same institutions that should protect life often benefit from its erasure. A vanished girl becomes a headline, a distraction, a statistic, a tool. The Polaroid is a spark, but the machine is the fire. When you look at Tara Calico's story, ask yourself who gained, who benefited from the silence, who profited from the confusion, and why is it, decades later, that the photograph still exists in memory while the truth remains buried? The machine wants you to believe this is unsolvable, but the truth is, it was never meant to be solved. You've heard the story, you've seen the Polaroid in your mind's eye, you felt the silence pressing down like a weight. But now you must understand what it means for you. Because this is not only about Tara Calico, not only about one missing boy, not only about families torn apart by questions that were never answered. This is about the cage that has been built around your own perception. Most people consume stories like this as entertainment. They listen, they shiver, they turn the page, they scroll to the next video. They stay safe in the illusion that these horrors belong to someone else. But you know better. You wouldn't still be here if you didn't. You feel it, that every disappearance, every unsolved case, every silence is part of a greater pattern. And once you sense the pattern, you cannot go back to sleep. Here is the truth. Knowledge is dangerous. To learn how power hides its crimes, to see the cracks in the mask, to recognize that even evidence itself can be weaponized. This is not safe. It will change you. It will strip away the comfort of ignorance. But what is more dangerous still is to remain blind, to accept the lie, to live your life under the hidden hand and call it freedom. I am not telling you this to frighten you. I am telling you this to awaken you. You must choose which path you walk. To look away and return to silence, or to carry the burden of forbidden knowledge and let it harden you. That is what separates the asleep from the awake. That is what separates the obedient from the sovereign. Tara's case is a mirror. In it, you do not only see a missing girl, you see the structure of control itself. And if you have the courage to face it, you will also see your own reflection staring back. The Polaroid still exists. It sits in archives, in files, in grainy reproductions passed across the internet. Decades have gone by. Tara Calico never returned. The boy in the photograph was never identified. The world moved on as it always does. But the image remains. And that is the point. The Polaroid was never only about evidence. It was never meant to give closure. It was meant to hang in the air like smoke, to remind us of what lurks behind the curtain. It was meant to show us that people can disappear, that truth can be strangled, that justice can be stalled until it dies of starvation. It was meant to whisper the most dangerous message of all. You are not in control. But now you know better. You have seen how silence is manufactured, how evidence becomes a weapon, how symbols condition the mind. You've seen how a single image can outlive facts, how it can worm its way into the collective memory and shape fear across generations. You've seen the hidden hand at work. And so you face a choice. Do you close this story and let it fade, like all the others? Do you return to the comfort of forgetting, pretending the machine does not exist? Or do you carry it with you? Do you let it sharpen your eyes, harden your mind, awaken your instinct? Do you let it turn you into someone who cannot be fooled, cannot be silenced, cannot be controlled? The Polaroid that should not exist is not just a relic of one crime. It is a mirror held up to your face. It asks, will you look away, or will you descend deeper? Will you obey, or will you resist? The image will not answer. The institutions will not answer. The only answer that matters is the one you live. Remember this. Silence is not the absence of sound. Silence is the victory of power, and the only way to break it is to see,